And welcome back to another different episode of Tribal Council Chat. We are your hosts. My name is Brett Parnell.
And my name is Bruce Heller.
So, with something a bit different this week based on the last episode. Recently, coming up in the run to November, we saw the President of the United States give the last State of the Union address. So, I thought with this episode kind of being, eh, we will do the State of Survivor and talk about everything going on with the show and what our takes are on a lot of new changes into the Survivor and how we see everything going forward. But before that, I'm sure Bruce will be excited to announce that he may have won another bet this week. So take it away.
Yeah, so like we did with football, our two favorite hockey teams, and Brett is wearing his Senators jersey. And I was doing something right before this, so I didn't get to throw a jersey on. But the Senators and my Blues played last night, and last night when we're recording this, 2 nights ago when it's releasing, and the Blues won. So I got to cook up three trivia questions, and I've been busy, so one or two of these are going to be thought up on the spot. So let me find this because I had one written down. As I've mentioned on the show, one of my favorite seasons in all of Survivor, especially early Survivor, is Survivor the Australian Outback. So in that season, after day 10, the castaways had faced the threat of what type of natural disaster?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Bruce? You just kind of.
Yeah, so in Australian Outback, basically what type of natural disasters did they have to face the threat of after day 10, I believe?
So, like on day 10 or at any point during.
I think it's from day 10 forward.
Fires and floods.
Wildfires was what I was looking for. So, next up, okay, here's some. We've had a few different rock draws throughout Survivor history, and they have been different colored rocks each time, I guess I could say. So, thinking back to various rock draws, who drew the white rock?
Who drew the white rock? That would be Katie.
That would be Katie Collins, Blood versus Water. Okay, and can you name each first boot of the new era so far?
Each first boot of.
I have to think about this too.
Let's go back. Jelinski, we know.
Yeah.
45. Actually, not. I never thought to look into early boots when I prepared for this.
I just thought of it off the top of my head. I'm on Brant Steele on my phone right now. I bet once I see the cat. Oh, yeah. Hannah, I guess. He quit, but
Yeah, that would make sense.
44 would have been Bruce, I guess. Medevac first.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling up the cast and doing this from memory. 41, I know, was Abraham, right?
That's right. Because Abraham went first in a two-part episode with Sarah going second in the same episode.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. That 41 premiere, I wasn't even watching the episode. I was kind of paying attention to the screen while chatting with Michelle and Wendell and Eliza and Victoria all night. So
Nice. 43 was Mariah. I remember that one now. So 42 before I look at the cast. I'm thinking. And let me look at it. Oh, Zach, wasn't it?
Zach Wickenberg.
Okay. So yeah. So what are we doing here? Because, like you said, this is a bit of a different. It's not a full episode recap. Not because this past episode wasn't a good episode. but it just didn't give us a lot to talk about. It's very straightforward, and the last 20 minutes of it, while interesting TV, as Probst talks about, that he's kind of going through the stages of grief of his own death in the game. Like, it's just 20 minutes of us knowing how it's going to end. So not a lot to talk about with the episode. So how do you want to do this?
How this is going to work, I'll go through one category at a time that I've sent you. But before we get into it, let's at least start like we always do with our players of the week. So who's yours?
This is interesting. And I haven't thought a ton about this. Just because, like, right after I finished, we decided to not do a full recap like normal. But even though I didn't like him early on, I'm going to go with Tevin this time because we're starting to see some growth from him. He kind of doesn't seem to be I forget how I phrased it, but he seemed kind of closed off, I guess, the first couple episodes and seemed to not want to talk to a couple people. But we see him kind of talking with everyone now, bonding with the tribe. We get a really cool moment of him cleaning a fish, and it being the first time that he's done that since his dad passed away, and that's something he had always done with his dad.
Yeah.
And we see him kind of start to realize how social Soda is and possibly start to come targeting her. So, solid episode for him, I think.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Mine is going to be a little less well thought out than yours. But I know one thing that you and I have always laughed about in this is go back to heroes versus villains. And we always joke about in probably about a third of our episodes since we've been doing this podcast for almost a year now. The most strategic thing that Rupert ever did is put a rock in his pocket. So my player of the week is Jem because she put a box in the ground. That's about
true.
the best strategic move there was.
Jem's a really good one. I thought about picking her. I went for a little bit of variety because I believe I picked her recently. But I picked Liz last week, but I think I picked Jem the week before that.
You did.
But yeah, great move from her. And real quick, because I know we're not doing a full episode recap, I did love the scene of they win the reward challenge and I think, hey, maybe we can win challenges. We need Banu to be a better player. So Q starts like not only coaching him like he has been doing, but like walking through these practice conversations and everything. And like you would see an athlete, like a basketball player practicing shots or a hockey player practice. Like, I don't know. It was just funny to watch.
Great scene. I agree.
And I'm sure we'll get into Banu throughout our categories. Sure. So take it away.
So how this is going to work, I have a list of categories just for the audience. I've showed it with Bruce before we started. I'm going to give the categories out one at a time. And we can, like I said, it's the state of Survivor. We're just going to really talk about how each section is currently going in the new era and how we think that it could either stay the same or what we think needs to improve in order to get better. And also what we like that they're doing. So let's start with casting, because I think that's probably the biggest topic that everybody talks about. So we'll jump off the deep end first. Bruce, what's your thoughts on casting so far, especially in the last two seasons?
So casting was kind of a big hot button thing last season with 45 because we saw Hannah and Sean both quit. And I don't remember ever seeing two quits in one season before. And if we have, it's been a while. But honestly, for the new era, casting has been awesome. Like, I know a lot of people either there's a lot of people that kind of have been hating on the casting for the new era, and I don't get it. We've gotten so many good characters. Two quitters last season got through the rigorous casting process, but I mean that's two out of how many people cast in the new era. I feel like the system is still working pretty well. It's just you're gonna miss sometimes, and even if we've gotten some people that even if they aren't great players, they've been awesome TV, really compelling, interesting characters. So like, I like what they're doing with casting, and Obviously, during COVID, between Winners at War and 41, they passed the. I believe CBS did this for all three of their reality shows, this diversity initiative. And that's been working great. It's really causing us to get to see people from a lot of different backgrounds, which has been awesome.
So I definitely agree with you there. I think the diversity initiative that was started, I think it's gone to all three shows. I'm not sure if it applies to Viacom shows like The Challenge just yet, but I know it does with Survivor, Big Brother, and Amazing Race. And started through Survivor. I think that's been great. It's definitely really good to see this more diverse group. Where I think that they could improve in this section is it's great to have super fans in the game. I think we all love that. But kind of touching on, I know you and I talked about that whole like Jeff talking about villains and how he was kind of misunderstood. And I agree he was misunderstood. Going back to that kind of topic, yes, I do want to see fans of the show play, but I also want to see people play who want to play.
Yeah.
I don't want to see people play who just want to play for the experience. I want to see people play who want to win. So I'm
Yeah.
curious what you think about that.
I get that. And since you mentioned the Probst thing, yeah, I have gotten kind of annoyed by people's reaction to that online because it's kind of become a popular thing for some reason within the online Survivor fandom, at least, to throw shade at Jeff whenever possible. And people don't like the direction he's taken the show in or think he's ruining it or whatever. The show wouldn't still be on the air without him. He's
Absolutely not. I agree.
I don't know why people suddenly think he's ruining the show, but he's not. But that
No,
quote,
no question.
it got taken as Probst saying he didn't want villains. And what he's really saying is they're not casting people for specific roles. Like they're not going to cast someone just to be a villain. They're looking for the most compelling and interesting people and characters. And this isn't anything new. They've been casting this way for a while now. I don't know why people are freaking out about it now, other than that they're just too lazy to look at what Probst actually said. But I agree with you. I and see, I feel like this is
That
coming up with Banu, the whole like million hearts quote. Then the thing is like, yes, he was terrible at the game and didn't understand the game. Very interesting character. Seems like a likable guy, and he made good TV. I'll say like there was some awkward. He cried a little bit too much for me, but like Banu was good television. So I don't know.
into that a bit more in depth here because I do agree with you that they do should cast the most dynamic personalities, that they don't just need to look for somebody who's going to be a villain, like, say, Russell, or like some of the people that we see cast on the challenge who you can tell are not there to win the show, but are just there to cause drama, like, say, an Amanda Garcia. We don't
Yeah.
need that on Survivor. At the same time, where I guess I'm a bit concerned and kind of going off my last bits is like you say, that you do want to see the best personalities, and I do too, but I'm a little concerned that we might be moving into in the last few seasons at least, too much of the everybody has some sort of tragic life event, and therefore we want to see them on the screen and have a cast of all just nice people. When I look at the new era, characters that some people hated, I thought were some of the best. I still am at this day, and after 6 seasons of the new era, saying that Sydney and biggest villainess out of these last 6 seasons.
Yeah. And
But everyone at the time didn't really like her character, maybe for a couple of reasons totally outside the game, which are uncalled for and unacceptable in my opinion. But at the same time, also, it seems that the editing is just showing us I want X, Y, or Z to win because of all the problems they've had outside the game as opposed to who's playing the best game.
yeah, And I think there's a happy medium there because there have been seasons before where, because what you're saying is absolutely true. And I don't know if it's necessarily sob story intended, but it comes off there. But the new era has been very backstory driven and getting to know these characters as people, which early Survivor did that a lot too. Like they even had like shots of their player intros of these people back home. So, but there's a lot of seasons in like mid, I'll just say new school Survivor, which so 20 to 40, where people complain that it's too game body and there's not enough personality or backstory. Like I've probably the one I see that complain about the most is millennials versus Gen X. So somewhere in the middle, they maybe lean a little bit heavy on it now, overcompensating. But like I like the backstories. It's interesting to get to know these people as people rather than just players.
Absolutely, I agree. And I'll just say one more thing before we jump into topic two. I think you hit that nail on the head there when you talked about both sob story and backstory. That might be the one tip that I could give to casting if anybody happens to be listening out there is try to see if they can find some prospective applicants that aren't necessarily that have that backstory but are just people who love the show and are excelling and want to come and prove it on the show and play to win.
Well, and also, and this kind of goes back to them only casting through applications now, is one of the most popular characters in the history of Survivor, specifically old school, starting with my favorite season, Survivor China. Courtney Yates has said like she was a waitress and someone recruited her, knew nothing about the game going out there, and honestly, I believe I've heard someone say somewhere she just wanted to go on the pre-jury trip. She's one of the best and most loved characters in the history of the show now. So maybe it doesn't always even have to be people that know the game, but the sob story aspect and the sad aspect, I feel like that's not as much casting as it is editing. Because it's when they, and Probst was talking about the backstories on Fire either this week or last week, that they don't reveal the backstory to you until it's necessary to know the person, something along that lines. But I think it's the way they do it and the way they edit it that's coming off that way. I don't think that's casting.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something there when you say editing, because I almost am wondering, and maybe this is then a suggestion for editing, if 4 years ago this week the world was in a totally different place. And oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You froze for a second. Okay, good. I got you back. What I was saying is 4 years ago this week, the world was in a totally different place where pretty much everybody outside of Mexico and some of America was under a strict lockdown. And I almost think that like 41, 42, when 25% of the cast had some sort of story about COVID, has just kind of stuck there when now we're in back to the normal world where people don't really care about that aspect. But editing kind of shifted towards it at the time because it's what was going on at the time. The same way, for example, we saw editing give Ken a very positive edit on Thailand as a New York police officer after 9/11.
Yeah. And that's cool. Like I said, like a lot of people don't like the backstories I'm seeing. Personally, I like getting to like I think it's cool to get to know these people as people rather than just players of a game and understand them and their background better. That's interesting to me.
You're totally right with that. I love seeing the backstories. I would just like maybe if they leaned a bit more of a positive direction to push people forward. But
And we
let's
kind
move
of
on.
got that in a way with the Tevin thing this episode. Him talking about his
Absolutely, I
dad
love
didn't
that.
really feel like a sob story. He just kind of mentioned, this is my first time doing this since he passed away. I never got, like, the only sob aspect of it was him saying, I never got to do that last fishing trip with him.
Yeah.
So they can
Oh,
do
yeah, I
it,
love
they
that
just
part.
don't.
So let's into the tribe format as our next topic. And I think we see a lot of discussion about this online. So I'm curious to know, what do you think about having this 18 player seasons in 3 tribes of 6 for the last 6 seasons?
Well, I don't think it's going anywhere because Probst likes it. I've heard him say, not just on Fire, but a couple different places, that he likes that there's nowhere to hide. And I know that a lot of the fan base would like to see him go back to just 2 tribes of 10. I see the benefits to both ways. I do kind of see where he's coming from, that there's nowhere to hide because, there have been times a player kind of just floats through the early merge into the merge undetected, and people complain about that. So this kind of takes away the ability to just float. You have to play more. But obviously, more people on the seasons would be fun if they go back to 20. Just more fun characters and people to get to see on the show, more personalities. But I don't know. It's interesting because 2 seasons in a row now, maybe 3 with 44. Tico wasn't great pre-merge, but they weren't disasters like these two, like Lulu last season and Yanu this season. I don't know if the 3 tribe format has anything to do with that because we didn't really see that on 41, 42, 43. So or just one tribe is a total disaster. But I don't know.
And that was my thoughts exactly too. Yeah, I like the fact that there is nowhere to hide. I do agree with Jeff on that. I don't know how production comes around with actually selecting who's on what tribes, but that I think is the one problem that we're seeing here. And I think this kind of does go into some other things that I'm going to bring up in the next section, I think is really tied to this in the new era, but which is challenges and and fire, by the way, for those of you who are wondering where I'm going with this. But I think that maybe they should look at some sort of way of going, how can this be a bit more equal so one tribe doesn't just get eaten alive by the elements and by the challenges and therefore by each other in front of our eyes every season.
Yeah. And I honestly, I want to
As
say part
I
of
always
that.
said,
I want to say part of that has to do with taking the flint. But like I said, we didn't have this with 41, 42, 43, where just the same tribe keeps going back 3 or 4 times in a row. So I don't know.
some of them we did, like 41, with the exception of Shannon Ricard. That tribe was pretty horrible.
Yeah, but it did. I don't know. It didn't feel like such a disaster like Yanu and Lulu have. I want to say the yellow tribe Yasa went to tribal once or twice at least, whereas like not Lulu, Yanu has lost the immunity challenge 4 times in a row now. Like, so
Exactly. And there's a point when we get into that section that I want to make in relation to a positive that I did notice in the last week as well. But I'll get there when I get to it. But no, I do tend to agree with that. But that's one thing that I think that they, I guess, could look at, of seeing how that would work, because it's like, I don't know about you, but I always said when I ranked the seasons back in old school and new school Survivor, the seasons that I had at the bottom was seasons like of my rankings list of, say, like the first 20 or 30 seasons. The seasons that I enjoyed watching the least were ones like Palau and Fiji, where one tribe just dominated the other tribe week after week after week. And
yeah,
I guess that therefore we're proving the case that it's not necessarily a 3 tribe format, because that can happen in a 2 tribe format as well. It just kind of, at least from my take as a longtime fan, doesn't help the season become an elite season.
I feel like it doesn't. One tribe being like that doesn't necessarily make it automatically awful either, though, because one of my favorite, probably my favorite season of the new era, and we'll get into this later, it was 45. So I thought 45 was a really fun season, other than the two quits. But I guess that's where the three helps, because even though you have one losing the whole time, you still have two other tribes that are fun and interesting. It's not like, say, Palau, where you only have Karor and Oolong. You have that third tribe that's interesting.
So let's get to the next section. I want to talk about this whole new idea of penalties for challenges and specifically how that's coming into effect the show as a whole, as well as like earning your camp supplies and starting with nothing, having no rice, which I've heard now through some players that was a case even before, it just wasn't really talked about. But really, the change, basically, where I'm coming from this is some of the changes we've seen to adapt to making the 26-day game. I guess some people try to claim harder than the 39-day game through these aspects, even if it is a shorter game.
Yeah. As for what's harder, I don't know. We'll never know actually until we have someone play both formats. I I've never been a fan of taking the flint every time you finish last in a challenge with the new era for whatever reason. The not giving them the bag of rice anymore. I don't love it, but I don't hate it the way I do with the flint. I don't know why. I just hate the thing with the flint. But
I agree with you there. I think the food there's clearly ample resources to get enough food to survive if you want to go look for it. The rice wasn't that necessary.
yeah, there's coconuts, there's definitely papayas, or at least there was on 41. So
Um, the flint I do think is even though we say like after Kolong and Caleb's medevac, I guess the flint isn't quote necessary because you don't need to boil the water anymore. I still think it's necessary in order to have a good season
yeah.
because if one tribe is just stuck in a downpour getting rained on with no fire and therefore no heat, good luck winning the next challenge.
Yeah, and it's necessary to cook food also. Like if you catch a bunch of fish or something. If you have like a
And we saw
Jonathan
that
Young or
this week
someone.
how Q pointed out to Probst that the fish was completely useless to his tribe.
Yeah. So they got a
And
toolbox, which was cool.
yeah, that was cool. But I think that that is, at least in my mind, when I think of like, because I've done not a ton, but I've done a bit of camping and I've done a bit of backpacking in rural environments in Europe and in the Middle East. And the day you get rained on just sucks. And yes, this is Survivor. It's going to happen. But if you have no way to warm up and then have to go compete against tribes that have flint and a tarp and a fishing spear, this is why we're seeing these tribes getting decimated, in my view.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I was kind of gonna say last time. In tribes like Yanu and Lulu, it's cause of the Flint thing, and then they're weaker than the other tribes for reasons you just said, and then it just keeps snowballing.
Yep.
But we didn't. I'm also confused because, like I said, we really didn't, to me, have a tribe that felt like this first until 44. But even Tika didn't like have the depressing vibe that Lulu and Yanu have had.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And that I think ties back into like what I was saying. Oh, sorry about that. Knocked something over. My bad. That's kind of what I think I was saying about casting, though, too, is yes, we saw this a bit in 41, we saw it a bit in 44, but we didn't have Hannah and Sean and Banu in those seasons who just weren't there for the right reasons.
Hannah, Hannah and Sean, I feel like are a different category because they did quit. Banu at least stuck it out. Like he wasn't good at the game, but he tried. And I also would put him aside from the other two because he's an interesting personality. Like, not that Hannah and Sean necessarily weren't. I just didn't see a ton of them, and they chose to quit and go home. Banu gave it everything he had. He just wasn't good at the game at all, but likable guy, fun character.
And in the
I feel
topic
like
of,
he was a good
I
casting
want
choice.
I want to get into Bono's exit in the next section because I do have at least, I don't know if this will be a popular opinion, something you've never thought of, something you might have a take on, but I do have theories for that. So do you want to just get into our next section?
Sure.
So this is Journey's beware advantages and losing votes. I'll let you get into that in a second, but I'm just going to throw out what I thought about this episode specifically. If we're going to do this lose your vote thing that seems to happen all over the place now, which I think is good, I don't necessarily hate it. Don't necessarily even dislike it. But I think maybe for beware advantages, it might be fine as is. For these journey challenges, I think maybe just a small tweak to the rules would make it so much better. And that is you lose your vote this episode, not the next time you have to vote. So therefore, if your tribe doesn't go to tribal council, we don't have to go a week later, 2, 3 weeks later. Oh, when they finally lost, Banu can't do anything. If Banu gets his vote back this week, then he hasn't fighting a chance because all he has to do is convince one person to force a tie.
Which he would have been able to do had he not, for some reason, been like, hey, remember when I said I didn't give away very much? I lied. Here's everything I said.
Exactly.
Oh,
But
I
I
don't know why
also
he did
think
that. I was so frustrated
I
there. Like, he's so
I don't know either.
there.
But I also think that that kind of maybe contributes to why he said that is as we saw in this episode, he goes and looks for an idol that isn't there, goes to tribal, and they don't even cast ballots because he knows the end result. He's going to get up and walk out, and he just says to Jeff, I don't have a vote, I don't have an idol. It's as if at that point he's basically not even playing anymore.
Well,
In
what can he do
contrast, I
at
know
that
you're
point,
watching.
though?
Pardon?
What can he really do at that point?
No, that's exactly my point. Is I'm saying if they go and vote that night, I think it's fairer. But I think they should look at these journeys and be like, you lose your vote until the next for like this episode
Yeah.
at the next tribal council, as opposed to your next tribal council, so that way we can have a good edited episode where Banu is talking to Q and trying to say Kinsey's playing a dominant game, and he's talking to Kinsey and trying to say, I think Tiffany has an idol, so we should try to blindside her. And actually, we probably would have got a much better edited episode last week, but also this would have played itself out differently time after time after time, probably every episode for since 41.
Yeah, and
And I think
honestly,
it would give people a lot more desire to like take some risks when they're given the option at this Journey Island, knowing that if they can go and win an immunity, let's say that episode, they don't have a penalty all of the sudden.
yeah, and honestly, if Banu just hadn't told them everything that he shared with the other people at his journey, I feel like he would have been able to convince Q to go with him. Because Q's been kind of cautious of Kenzie the past couple episodes. So all he had to do was stay quiet on that, and I don't know why he didn't. But
On your side here, what do you necessarily think about this idea I have that maybe you should lose your vote for the episode, not potentially go into the merge boot without a vote just by nature of the fact that your tribe is winning?
my thing with this is I just kind of think the new era messes with people's votes too much. Like with the beware advantage, at this point, people know what it is. They have a choice whether they want to risk their vote or not. with the journeys, they don't. Like, it's go play this game. If you lose your vote. Maybe have an opt out if you don't want to lose your vote. You can just choose to not play, like you can with the Beware advantage. But like
I
in old
I think that's something that we even did see that with the ship wheels back in like 41 and 42 is you could preserve your vote. But I think that might be something that production is a little nervous of at this point because too many people like us who know the game, who talk about losing votes, might just decide actually my vote is way more important and I'm not going to play week after week after week.
True, but there's also so many people that are just going to be advantage hungry and think you should do whatever it takes to get any advantage ever.
Yeah.
But like we saw throughout old school and new school, this idea of possibly losing your vote come up here and there. But with the new era, it's just been every episode. We're messing with, I think it's too much. Like, we don't need Beware advantages are one thing because that's kind of replaced the camp idols. I like those. I like the various ways we've done Beware advantages, whether it's the digging for the box we see this season, or the bleeds, or my personal favorite 41 and 42. We had the weird sayings that you had to say to challenge.
Yeah.
But like, I don't feel like we need to do ship wheel, journey island, advantage, whatever we're calling it. We don't need to do this every episode.
I agree.
Like, we can just get rid of that concept, honestly, because that kind of goes into what I don't know if we've talked about this, but it's definitely something that gets talked about. Is there's just so many advantages with the new era that it's hard to keep track of. So between the not enough votes issue and the advantage overload, if you just get rid of advantage island, ship, whatever you want to call it, it solves both of those problems. I think I'd be okay with that.
Now I want to kind of take a step backward here. I do I do have a note that was under this section, but it maybe should have been part of the last section, so it ties into both. But there was one thing that I really liked this past week where we saw us go back to a separate reward and immunity challenge. And the reason I had it under this section is I said that might be an easier way that we could do this journey is have it be done at an individual reward challenge as opposed before an immunity challenge so we could know who's losing a vote and who isn't and so on and so forth. But I also think that this kind of would help if we had these separate reward and immunity challenges, whether we see them or don't see them. I'm not really concerned either way. But if we did go back to those separate challenges, we might have a bit more level playing field where it's not always the person with immunity that's also getting the spear or getting the turret.
I would agree with that.
Because that's also just only increasing this snowball effect of not only it's like two tribes are moving up in the world and the other one is sending somebody home.
Yeah. I also think
And
as far as
potentially, if you have a weaker tribe mate, sending somebody with you a tribe getting immunity also gets maybe an even other reward called getting to sit somebody out.
yeah. And I also wish they would, and I don't know if they're going to with this season or not. I really hope they do. Is do tribe swaps because
Yeah.
that kind of helped 45. Lulu lost the first three in a row. Turns out they had a swap scheduled for episode 4, and everything changed anyway. Whereas,
I hope they do, because like I was telling you today, we've now lost 3 members of the same tribe, and that was bound to happen. But Kinsey and Tiffany and Q are all such good players that I don't want to lose them just because of the tribes being unbalanced at this point this early.
yeah, for sure. I would agree
They'll
with
all be
that.
good characters going post merge.
Yeah.
All right. So now we get to your topic is pros and cons of the new era. What did you want? I'll let you take the lead here because I know you suggested it.
Yeah, I've just seen a lot of discussion and heard people talk about that they love the new era, they hate the new era. So I guess I'll just start with this. What has been your favorite season of the new era so far before we actually get into the ups and downs of it?
Um, 43 closely followed by 42.
And see, I'm glad you said 43 because 43 gets so much hate online and
I love
it's
that season.
so much shade thrown at it, but it's such a good cast. Jesse's
Like
incredible. It,
Gabler winning, I'll admit, was a disappointment to me, but at the same time, he's a great cast member. I think I'm gonna be honest. I think a lot of that is totally the hate that's given to that season is totally out of game,
yeah,
and I don't get it. I know some people can't separate this. I live in another country than most survivor castaways. I don't care which contestant, oh sorry, which candidate people support in US government or anything like that. I know a lot of people that decides their favorites online and we can't get away from it. It's just the divided nature that both our countries are right now.
yeah.
Um,
But
I,
Gabler winning
Gabler was
was,
such a great character. Cassidy is clearly someone that should be back time and time again. Also played a great game on the challenge. Jesse is probably the best non-winner. Cody was great. Carlo was great. Such a great group that year.
yeah,
And then going back to 42, like even kind of the same thing. I was disappointed a bit with Marianne's win. I thought Mike was going to win, but Marianne had an amazing final tribal
yeah,
council. Lindsay and Omer were two players that I thought were going to go really far and unfortunately just faded out before. Um, Tori was somebody that I would have liked to see go a lot further than she did. It was unfortunate the way that she went out with no control.
yeah.
Your favorites?
I would probably say 45 or 43. Just 45 was a really fun cast. Other like the two quits obviously put a down spot on it, but oh well. D like 45 is cool for me because I picked the winner, and I genuinely I wasn't just rooting for her because I picked her. I genuinely thought she played an incredible game.
Oh, she did.
Best player. Like at one point, she legitimately just had everyone else playing for her best interest, and she just seems like a really fun, likable character. But also, Austin was fun. The growth we saw from Emily from being the constantly like negative and serious person that was gonna get first booted if Hannah didn't quit because everyone didn't like her, to
Yeah.
being a very likable, fun, smiling person by the time she gets booted, and being booted because she's such a threat was a really cool growth arc. You already talked about how great the 42, not 42, 43 cast was, but 45 also hit us with some bangers. D, Emily, Caleb was really fun. Sifu was kind of everywhere, but he was a really fun, energetic, positive guy. Would have liked to have seen him a little bit longer, but just and there's even some characters that went early that we didn't get to see a ton of that I would have liked. I'm curious to see more of, like a J Maya. But
Yeah.
and I will touch on this. You said, admittedly, the night the 43 finale aired, I was disappointed with Gabler's win, but I don't think that's necessarily on him as much as it is they didn't edit the season very well. Because I've seen people say online, I believe I said Owen said this somewhere. Anyone who spends time around Gabler in person can tell why he won. I've heard he's a very friendly, likable, down to earth guy that just gets along with people.
Yeah. And this is Owen, who is probably the closest cast member to the second place Cassidy Clark within that cast.
Yeah, but we've seen this though. We've seen that, and a lot of time has passed between each of these seasons, so it's not even the same people. So I get probably not the same production people. I'm guessing like some are the same, but I'm guessing some have left and come. Survivor and their formula for editing has trouble doing a good job editing people who win based on their social game. Look at Natalie White. We didn't see very much of her. I wasn't a fan at the time, but I'm guessing people were shocked that she won. People have come around on that now, but you still see the Michelle versus Aubrey debate because Michelle was incredible socially and Aubrey was incredible strategically. And much like the Natalie and Russell thing, it's easier for them to give a good edit that shows the strategic players and not the social players. And I just think 43 was a victim of that. They don't know how to edit social winners very well compared to strategic winners, like a D, for example.
Yeah, you're right. All right, so moving on to our last topic before we end out the show with the two things that we normally do. I want to go briefly into the topic of final tribal just because I know it does come up in the new era. 41 and 45, we saw them go back to the pre-Kolong question and answer period. A little bit different here and there, but that's fine. But I really like that. I hope they keep it. What do you think?
I would agree with that. And real quick, going back to just a general new era comment, I have loved the new era. I'm not one of these that just hates it like some people do. But if you look at the three divisions, old school, new era, it is my least favorite of the three, but it's still been incredible. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And who knows, it might, like the other two divisions we got 20 seasons of. This one we've had six.
Yeah,
So hopefully we get another 14 strong seasons and maybe can have that discussion in season 60.
yeah. Hopefully 50 is another all-star season, by the way.
Hopefully. We'll
I
see
know
what
he has said multiple times that they realize they have to do something for 50, but they have to get through 47, 48, 49 before they even get renewed for 50. So I'm not sure how much they've thought about it yet.
I was even wondering something that I just thought of the other day, and I'm curious to know if you what you think of it now that it's on my brain and we're right here. But they're casting right now, as we've seen the commercials, for 47 and 48 that'll be filmed this year at some point, I guess. Or
Yeah.
they've probably already cast for those and they should be going out to play, so they're probably getting ready to look at the future. I guess the thought that I had was people have talked about different themes. I know Legend seems to be the most popular for 50. What if we didn't cast for that 49-50 era and did 49 as all new era all-star players and then Legends for 50, giving somebody in 49 in the new era the chance to solidify themselves as a legend?
Kind of like the challenge just did, no vets, but did like battle for a new champion so someone can call
Exactly.
themselves a champion.
Going into a huge iconic number like the challenge is doing right now for 40. If you haven't seen that cast and you're interested, check it out. Michelle's coming back and ready to go again.
I really am disappointed the challenge only brought Natalie on once, by the way, because she did
Same as
really
me.
good her one season.
Agreed. But do you get what I'm saying though? Is like obviously they've had one game, it was amazing. But what if somebody like D or Jesse could play it, or even some other players that maybe just didn't make it, or Ricard, Lindsay, Cassidy, could play against the best of the new era in order to solidify their spot as someone who deserves to be with the best of the best one season later.
I don't know if I'd rather them do two all-star seasons in a row because I don't think we've ever seen 2 fully returnee seasons in a row, so I don't feel like that's likely. But
The closest we got to it would have been like 31 and 34.
well, yeah, and 26 was half all stars and 27 was half all stars. But I feel like the thing to do with your concept here would be for 50, do it as legends, but go back to the 2 tribes and have one tribe be your all stars best from the new era and have the other tribe
Yep.
be, I don't know what to call it, but the old game combined with the old school and new school players. And
I would even consider.
kind of do
I would
50
even
as these
consider just.
legends versus the new legends.
I like that. I would even consider if I were them maybe just doing new school versus new era. The school is probably already done at a different point in life, but get those players from like 25 to 40 versus the players from 41 to 50.
Oh, I'll take the players from before 20 if they want to come back. Like I don't know how many of them actually do, but if
I
they
don't
do,
think
bring them
that
on.
many. That's what I was wondering. All right, so moving on. That was a great episode, but let's go with just to where we often end our episodes. We'll still keep this the same way. And let's start with power rankings. Who do you think is top, is in the best spot in your mind?
I believe this is my second week in a row putting this person on top, but I am going to go back to Gem because last week I went with her, I believe, because she found the idol undetected. And now they've done the group idol hunt, and she is not only like she's basically confirmed that she won't be detected because everyone they found the clue. She planted the clue so suspicion would go on someone else, which is a brilliant move.
It was.
It looks like they probably dug 6 feet into the ground looking for this thing, and before they realized it wasn't there, and they all think Tim has it and that he's overcompensating just because he's a very expressive person. So great episode for her because she not only hasn't been suspected, but basically is confirmed that she won't be. She's in a great spot on her tribe,
You
I
don't do
think.
nothing with this one. I'm picking Gem in this spot as well, at least for now. She's, I think, in a really good spot to not only be sitting in the merge, but to make a deep run in this game at this point.
I agree completely.
So let's get into Allied Blindside first boot before we wrap up for tonight. Do you got
Are we
3
doing
names
bottom
for me?
rankings also?
What?
Are we doing bottom rankings also?
We didn't do the bottom. My bad.
You go first because
So
I'm still trying to figure out who I'm putting here.
who are you putting in the bottom? Um, I hate to do this because I don't think that he should be in any way the last ranked player, but I'm gonna go with Q here. And my rationale for that isn't that he's playing a bad game. I think he's playing a really good game. But again, this tribe is just so deprived that I don't see them winning again. And seeing that he at least flirted with the idea of allying with Banu, I think that makes Kenzie and Tiffany in a spot where the two of them have trusted each other since day one and will take Q out if they have to, even though they don't want to.
Yeah, and to be fair, we've seen Q and Tiffany bond pretty closely, also separate from Kenzie.
And it'll be interesting to see if they were to lose this episode, with what bonds we start seeing get shown and trying to decipher what was the most, which bonds within this tribe are the strongest versus which ones we've just seen when they come up to tell a story.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with either Q or Kenzie. It'll depend on who Tiffany's closer to. I kind of lean towards it being Q, but as far as him being more safe than because they've both realized how social Kenzie is and have commented if she gets to a merge or a swap, she's happy and fun and positive and just social, and she'll be able to work with and get along with anyone. So, and also she's on Kevin's team, and we need to start putting points on him in our game because I'm getting decimated here.
We do. Because if there's two players that can go out from Kevin's team in a row, then I'm going to be in first place.
Yeah, I've had like 3 in a row now, so I'm in trouble.
Yeah. You're
Actually,
going to
let me
need the
update the
3
audience on that real quick because I haven't been doing that. But like we said, golf rules: lowest score wins. The player that gets voted out, it adds that many points to the team they were on. Kevin is still at 0 points. Brett is at 18, and I am up to 48 after getting
you're going to need
17, 15, and 16 out.
You're going to need you people to like come like at least all make the finale to be in contention.
At this point, I'm just rooting for my winner pick to be right because I realize how unlikely it is that I'll win the challenge. But even then, I don't know how I feel because each episode, my feeling about Venus as my winner pick is just going on this roller coaster. It's going so up and down episode to episode. I don't know what to do with that. So, yeah.
All right. So let's get into a line blindside first boot. Do you have a list? Do you want me to go? You pick it.
You go first.
Okay. So what we saw this week was Banu make an exit in a really weird fashion. So you're gonna be getting a list of 3 players of Survivor who barely understood the game of Survivor.
Oh, this will be fun.
So that is, let me just pop back out one name written down, and I need to just quickly find it because those I thought I had it memorized, and there's only 2 in my mind. So just give me 2 seconds, okay?
No, you're good.
Okay, there we go. So your options are starting with Survivor Edge of Extinction, Liam Daly.
Oh, gosh.
From Survivor Micronesia, Chet Welch. And going all the way back to an island off the coast of Borneo in Survivor 1, BB Anderson.
Oh, gosh. I don't like any of these options. I don't feel like it would be me, but we have seen Reem get along with some people. So I guess I'll align with her because I just feel like she'll be able to help the tribe in challenges pre-merge better than someone like a BB could. Who is the second one, by the way?
Chet.
Yeah, Chet's not helping in challenges any either. He's just gonna get drugged through by Joel and hit his head on something. But literally drug on the ground. They were tied together. If you haven't watched Micronesia, great season. But
yeah, that was a disaster with the exception of Natalie and Alexis.
And then I feel like I could get Chet to vote the way I want to pretty easily compared to BB, who just is hard headed and stuck in his ways. So I'll first put BB and blindside Chet, I guess.
I'm going to do the opposite of you.
Okay.
I'm going to align with BB in this case because, as we see, he's probably one of the most honest people, at least in old school Survivor, that you know isn't going to deceive you.
Yeah.
I'm going to blindside Chet. I think he would be interesting to see how he would play if he went a bit further. Clearly was sociable, just couldn't keep up with anyone on that tribe, and like we say, got dragged by a guy who he was tied to. Who, I mean, I could have easily put Joel in this group. He's one of the worst players of all time.
Also, just not a very likable character.
Yeah. And that leaves me to first boot Liam because I will easily first boot anybody who touches my stuff.
That's fair. I forgot about that. Gosh.
All right, go ahead with yours.
So I realized Banu is the that third time ever we've had someone go home without casting any votes. Unfortunately, one of those times was the Varner thing and Game Changers, so I kind of just don't want to include him in this, so I can't do what I wanted to do. So I will do two of those three and then just go with the fourth person that just didn't understand or want to play the game very much, like you said. But my weird exit two are Banu, who we just talked about, Brandon Hance, who in Karamoan kind of had a meltdown and gets not even at tribal, but sent home at a challenge. I guess they kind of had tribal. The players cast their votes verbally, but
Yeah.
technically no votes were written down and cast. And then also from Micronesia, not Joel, not Chet, but Kathy Schleckman.
Interesting. That throws a wrench into plans because when you said that Bonu thing, I thought I was about to get from Korong, who would have been an easy ally in that case.
Yeah.
So with
That's
these
why I didn't
three,
give it to you. I knew you'd pick Alicia immediately.
yeah. So with these three, I am going to ally with Kathy. I don't know why. I think she'd be trustworthy. Hopefully, if she was to come out again, she'd have a little bit better of a idea of what she's getting herself into and thus be more prepared. I'm going to blindside Banu because we've seen the way he reacted with his own tribe, even of it being a bit hostile when they both Tiffany and Kinsey said they were voting for him, but then at the end they all got along again. So I think that he'd be very a good ally to have on the jury. That leaves me for obvious reasons, and you do not with. I'm glad that he point.
Can you repeat your reasoning for Brandon? Because you were cutting in and out on my audio.
Brandon, for obvious reasons, he was just not fit for the show and someone who's wild card.
See, I'm gonna first boot him, but I will say this: he was this wild card. Not probably shouldn't have been out there so soon after his first season mentally in Karamoan. But in his first season, I mean, he was loyal to his allies. He stuck by Upolu. So voted Michaela out basically because he had a crush on her, which was weird. But the people he was allies with, he was loyal to. That being said, I'm still gonna first boot him. I don't know if I'm getting South Pacific Brandon or Karamoan Brandon. So
Or today, Brandon.
I have no idea what he's up to now. But
Oh God.
I don't know. I guess I'll blindside Kathy and align with Banu just on the hope that I can coach and teach him the way Q was trying to.
Yeah. Great picks. And this is a great episode.
It
I'm
was.
really glad we decided to do it.
I agree.
So look out for that. It'll be up on, well, when you're listening to this on Saturday. And reach out online if you have anything. We'd love to hear from you. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Also, hit us up if you want stickers. Bye, guys.